Inside a deserted store, Carol frantically searches for any medication or stimulant to keep herself awake. Ominous forces pound on a nearby door, desperate to breach it. This chaos began just a few days ago. As a space shuttle hurtled back to Earth, it suddenly detonated, scattering fragments across numerous U.S. states. Media outlets went into overdrive, proclaiming it an alien invasion. Panic gripped the populace, with many fearing to touch the wreckage. However, opportunists emerged, hawking salvaged pieces on online marketplaces. Tucker, the head of the Center for Disease Control, reached one crash site for investigation. There, he learned a piece of debris harbored a strange organism, remarkably resilient to intense radiation. This organism also exhibited rapid multiplication, hinting at an extraterrestrial origin. During his departure, Tucker inadvertently brushed against a small piece of debris, receiving a minor finger cut. Dismissing the incident, he left the site. Later that evening, Tucker returned home, only to find his dog growling at him before inexplicably ignoring him. As he settled into bed, Tucker's body erupted in sweat, and his face underwent a disturbing cellular transformation, as if something was taking control. Meanwhile, Carol, Tucker's ex-wife, was awakened by their son Oliver's screams. Jolted from a nightmare, she rushed to his room to rouse him, and stayed by his side for the remainder of the night. The next morning, Carol received an unsettling call from Tucker, requesting a visit with their son, a highly unusual request. Carol rejects the call and abruptly ends the conversation. She then takes Oliver to school before heading to her office, where she practices psychiatry. On her way, she encounters her close friend Ben, who offers her a ride. Ben, a medical doctor, reveals his suspicion that the government is concealing crucial information. He mentions the mass resignation of researchers at the crash site. Carol, preoccupied with personal matters, brushes off his concerns and focuses on Tucker's erratic behavior. She expresses how his sudden desire to see their son after a 4-year absence strikes her as odd. Upon reaching her office, Carol meets with her first patient, Wendy. Wendy confides in Carol about her husband's bizarre recent behavior. Just days ago, upon returning home, the usually friendly family dog inexplicably growled at him. Shockingly, her husband responded by killing the pet without a hint of remorse. This account sparks a sense of unease in Carol, but for the time being, she simply prescribes Wendy new medication. Later that evening, Carol and her neighbor take their children trick-or-treating. As they approach a particular house, the family dog erupts in a frenzy of barking, a stark contrast to its usual temperament. The group attempts to leave, but the situation escalates when the dog lunges at one of the boys, pinning him to the ground. However, the boy exhibits a disturbing lack of concern. In fact, he tightens his grip on the dog's muzzle with his bare hands until the owner intervenes to restrain the animal. Despite the attack, the boy remains stoic, hiding any signs of pain. The group returns to Carol's place, where the children share their candy haul. The neighbor confides in Carol about her son's unsettling behavior, a recent detachment from emotions. Suddenly, screams erupt from another room. Carol rushes in to find Oliver clutching a grotesque piece of flesh he received with his candy. Panic sets in. The next morning, Carol disregards a terrified woman fleeing through the streets and heads straight to Ben. She shows him the strange flesh, and he relays it to his scientist friend, Stephen, for analysis. Stephen promises a thorough examination but warns of a lengthy process. Meanwhile, a sinister virus tears through the nation, claiming countless lives daily. The cause remains shrouded in mystery. A crisis meeting convenes in the capital. Tucker, with growing concern, explains the virus's exponential spread. He warns of an economic collapse if swift action isn't taken. Researchers plead for potential solutions. Tucker proposes a mass inoculation program as the only viable deterrent. Unbeknownst to the public, infected waiters contaminate tea meant for unsuspecting patrons. Back from the hospital, Carol witnesses a homeless man experiencing a seizure on the street. Unlike the fleeing woman, he receives assistance. Upon reaching her office, Carol is met with a chilling surprise: Wendy's emotionless husband demanding to see his wife. Carol, acting swiftly, calls Wendy to warn her about her husband. With Carol's intervention, Wendy avoids the building and opts to stay with her sister for safety. Later, wrestling with guilt, Carol reluctantly allows Oliver to visit Tucker, feeling it's the right thing to do despite her reservations. During their drive to Tucker's house, a frantic woman throws herself in front of the car. Carol slams on the brakes just in time. The woman pleads for help, frantically warning of impending disaster. Before she can elaborate, another car speeds by, ruthlessly mowing her down. Carol notices the driver's disturbing lack of emotion despite the horrific accident. When the police arrive, Carol expresses her desire to be a witness, but the lead officer dismissively tells her to go home, assuring her they'll handle it. This suspicious behavior deepens Carol's unease. Moments later, Carol drops off Oliver at Tucker's place. She can't shake the feeling that her ex-husband also displays an emotional disconnect. Afterwards, she joins Ben at a high society party. There, they engage in a philosophical discussion with diplomat Balisk, his wife Ludmila, and Dr. Yorush. Following the party, Ben drives Carol home. He attempts to kiss her, but Carol pulls away, unwilling to jeopardize their friendship. Entering her apartment, she sends a message to Oliver. A sudden disturbance at the door jolts her. Cracking it open cautiously, she finds a man claiming to be from the Census Bureau, an unlikely visitor at such a late hour. As Carol tries to shut the door, the man forces his hand in, triggering a physical confrontation. Carol overpowers the intruder and secures her door, sending him fleeing. Meanwhile, Oliver spends time with his friend Jean, who confides in him about his father's strange behavior, mirroring Oliver's own observations about Tucker. Returning home, Oliver finds Tucker preparing a special drink. The next morning, Carol ventures outside and witnesses a disturbing sight: a multitude of people with vacant stares, seemingly devoid of their souls. This unsettling reality intensifies upon reaching her office, where she discovers all her appointments have been cancelled. An attempt to contact Wendy proves futile as her emotionless husband answers the phone, insisting everything is fine. Carol's mind races as she pieces together the events: the frantic woman, the emotionless driver, and now the vacant stares. A horrifying realization dawns on her: the virus is seizing control of people. A frantic search for information online is interrupted by her secretary offering tea. Before Carol can take a sip, Ben calls with news: the test results for the strange flesh are in. Rushing to the lab, she learns from Stephen that the sample contains alien spores. These spores infiltrate the human brain during sleep, altering genetic code and rendering victims unstable. The chilling truth emerges: sleep equals death. To survive, they must stay awake until a cure is found. The situation takes another turn when Ben receives a call from Ludmila, reporting Yorush's erratic behavior. This spurs them to race to his house. Outside, Carol observes long lines forming, with people seeking the new virus vaccine. Bursting into Yorush's apartment, they witness a horrifying scene: Yorush's body undergoing a grotesque metamorphosis. Carol attempts to capture this transformation on camera, but the monstrous figure awakens with a violent lunge. Ben bravely intervenes, shoving Yorush back. The creature drags itself away before spewing an unknown liquid and expiring. Fear for Oliver's safety consumes Carol. She races to Tucker's house to retrieve her son. Upon arrival, she finds Tucker in a meeting with colleagues. Frantically demanding Oliver's whereabouts, Carol receives a dubious response: Oliver is supposedly playing at Jean's house. Disbelief clouds her judgment, and she embarks on a frantic search through the house. The men from the meeting encircle a terrified Carol, who flees in a desperate attempt to escape. Tucker, with shocking betrayal, tackles her and attempts to infect her with his saliva. Mustering all her strength, Carol manages to fend him off and bolts through the back door. Frantic pleas for help directed at the neighbors go unanswered. They too have succumbed to the infection. Reaching her car, she finds all escape routes blocked, leading to a devastating crash. Emerging from the wreckage, she's pursued by a horde of infected. A desperate dash for help leads her to the main avenue, but pleas for assistance are met with indifference. Forced underground, Carol seeks refuge in a subway station. Boarding a train, she's met with a sea of vacant stares. A glimmer of hope flickers as her phone buzzes: a message from Oliver. He pleads for her help, revealing that Tucker has hidden him. This revelation pushes Carol to the brink of despair. One passenger, however, breaks the monotony. He isn't infected. The subway car is filled with passengers mimicking emotionless expressions to avoid detection by the infected. A lone, seemingly unaffected passenger offers this strategy to Carol. Suddenly, the infected swarm into the car. Carol and the others scramble to the end, slamming the door shut. The infected pound on the barrier, desperate to break through. With no other choice, Carol pries open the back door and leaps out, hurtling through the tunnel until she reaches a deserted station locker room. There, she stumbles upon a guard's gun. When the guard himself appears, Carol, overwhelmed by fear, accidentally shoots him. Shaken, she discards the gun and ventures across the station, maintaining a facade of infection to blend in. Emerging from the station, she witnesses a horrific sight: police apprehending uninfected citizens and forcing them into a vaccination program that's actually a twisted scheme by Tucker to spread the virus further. A perceptive officer notices sweat beading on Carol's face, a giveaway of her human condition, and urges her to flee. Blending in seamlessly, Carol encounters her neighbor offering the vaccine. Her convincing performance fools the neighbor, who believes Carol has already been infected. Leaving Tucker's deserted house after a desperate search for Oliver, Carol ventures out, navigating a world where people are preoccupied with their own survival. Maintaining her emotionless act, she arrives at the Balisk mansion, where Ben and Stephen continue their research. After a brief conversation, Ben agrees to assist Carol in locating her son. Meanwhile, Stephen and his assistant gear up for a trip to Fort Detrick, Maryland, in search of a virus antidote. Fearing infection if they succumb to sleep, they resolve to stay awake. Balisk returns, and Ludmil greets him warmly. However, Balisk, infected and paranoid about trespassers, allows a swarm of guards to enter. Fortunately, Carol and the others spot this on the security monitors and escape through the back exit. Emerging onto the streets, they witness Wendy being forcibly abducted by infected police officers. Wendy resists, shouting about being unaffected by sleep, but the officers overpower her. Following their separation, Carol and Ben ponder Wendy's words, leading them to believe she might have developed a resistance to the virus. They discover a deceased officer and steal his car, heading to Carol's office to investigate Wendy's medical records. Ben uncovers Wendy's past diagnosis of encephalitis, a brain disorder, and proposes this as the reason for her immunity. The virus, it seems, targets healthy brains for sustenance and replication. Ben relays this newfound knowledge to Stephen at the lab, while Carol receives another message from Oliver, who reveals he's being held captive at his grandmother's place in Baltimore. Terrified, Carol admits to Ben that she's already been infected, but Ben assures her things will be okay. Subsequently, Ben drives recklessly towards the city, navigating roadblocks until forced to abandon Carol to divert the pursuing police. Carol continues on foot, maintaining a composed demeanor when stopped by an officer. She displays her identification and is permitted to pass. Finally reaching the station, she boards a train to Baltimore, seeking refuge in the bathroom. The sleep deprivation begins to affect her, causing hallucinations, like a doppelganger in the mirror menacing her. Jolting awake just in time, she cleans off a strange piece of flesh and opens the door to find Gene, who explains he's lost his family and now considers her his. Gene continues to urge Carol to succumb to sleep, but she placates him with promises to do so privately. Upon arrival in Baltimore, Gene discovers Carol once again removing the strange flesh from her body, fueling his suspicion. Tucker arrives to escort them to his mother's residence, duped by Carol's emotionless facade. Oliver is absent, but Carol maintains her charade with the family. When a call from Ben arrives, she resorts to cryptic language, claiming it's her secretary. With Tucker departed for work, Carol seizes the opportunity to ransack the house, ultimately locating Oliver in a hidden room. Initially hesitant, a few heartfelt words from Carol assuage Oliver's doubts, and they embrace in a tearful reunion. Oliver reveals he's been sleeping regularly without succumbing to the transformation, leading Carol to believe his medication for the sleep disorder is the key to immunity. Unfortunately, Gene stumbles upon their reunion, but Carol swiftly overpowers him and escapes with her son. Tucker, witnessing their escape through the window, launches a pursuit through the city streets. Oliver spots a broken window in a deserted warehouse, and they take refuge inside. However, Tucker follows them in. While Tucker engages in a villainous monologue, Carol attempts a stealthy escape towards the exit. Tucker foils her attempt but is interrupted by Oliver, who strikes him with a metal tool. This momentary distraction allows Carol to knock Tucker unconscious with a blow to the head, securing their escape. Following their escape, Carol and Oliver take refuge in a deserted department store. Carol scours the medical supplies section and discovers an injectable medication. She explains to Oliver that it should be administered directly into her heart if she ever succumbs to sleep. They then embark on a search for food. While Carol is engrossed in a phone call with Ben, who assures them of an imminent rescue, Oliver cautiously approaches a door marred by bloodstains. Fortunately, Carol intervenes before he opens it. Taking charge, Carol ventures inside and discovers a group of people undergoing the transformation, including a police officer. With measured steps, she retrieves his firearm before rushing out and securing the door. She sternly instructs Oliver to avoid the room. As the hours crawl by and they await Ben's arrival, Carol desperately searches for anything to stave off sleep, while Oliver succumbs to exhaustion. But her efforts are ultimately futile, and sleep claims her. The infected individuals inside the room awaken and begin pounding on the door in a desperate attempt to escape. The commotion jolts Oliver awake, and he finds his mother asleep. Without hesitation, he administers the injection, which serves as a jolt, reversing the transformation just in the nick of time. Carol cleans the grotesque flesh from her face and emerges from the bathroom to find Ben waiting. She rushes towards him for an embrace, only to be met with a horrifying revelation. Ben has become infected too. Carol recoils as Ben extends an invitation to join a new society free from crime, hate, and discrimination. Terror grips Carol as she aims her gun at Ben. Despite the threat, Ben unlocks the door, unleashing a horde of infected individuals. He reveals their hatred for immunity as he gestures towards Oliver. The infected lunges for the boy, prompting Carol to unleash a hail of bullets, eliminating them with deadly precision. However, she hesitates when it comes to Ben, opting for a shot to his leg instead. With Oliver in tow, she makes a desperate escape. Outside, they commandeer Ben's car, and Carol floors the accelerator, weaving through the city streets in a frantic bid for escape. A call from Stephen provides a glimmer of hope. A helicopter awaits them at a specific address. Reaching the main road, Carol finds herself trapped in a congested circle of cars. The collision sends her unconscious. Regaining awareness, she finds Oliver frantically shaking her awake as a horde of infected surrounds the vehicle. One infected individual manages to shatter a window, but Carol acts swiftly, accelerating and pushing the infected back. Several cling precariously to the car roof, forcing Carol to drive recklessly, smashing into objects to dislodge them. Police cars join the chase, repeatedly ramming theirs until a final impact sends the remaining attackers flying into a shop window. Miraculously, the car remains operational, and Carol continues following Steven's frantic directions. An infected individual throws a Molotov at their vehicle, yet Carol presses on, driving the burning car towards their destination. Reaching the designated parking lot, she crashes the car into a pillar. Abandoning the wreckage, Carol and Oliver sprint towards the elevator, just as the infected horde closes in. In a final surge of effort, they slam the elevator doors shut, narrowly escaping the grasp of the infected horde. They reach the rooftop, where Steven and his military companions whisk them away to safety in a helicopter. Time passes, and scientists outside the United States develop a successful vaccine. This miraculous cure eradicates the alien virus from the planet, paving the way for a return to normalcy. At a press conference, the lead scientist, Steven, announces that the vaccinated population will have no recollection of the harrowing events. Meanwhile, Carol has taken Jean in as her own, and she has embarked on a romantic relationship with Ben. As the boys head off to school, Ben reads the newspaper, commenting on the surge in violent crimes. Carol can't help but ponder the aliens' promise of a peaceful world, a stark contrast to the harsh reality unfolding before her. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more awesome videos.